Welcome to the Savvy Ladies Wednesday Wisdom webinar. I'm Maggie Montemuro, and I'm the Marketing Manager at Savvy Ladies. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can use the chat box. If you're joining us by phone, email your question to info@savvyladies.org. Today's presenter is Tina Larsson, CEO and co-founder of the Folsom Group. Tina has over 20 years of investment and research analyst experience in the finance industry. She co-founded her own independent investment advisory firm in 2007, following a long career as a portfolio manager and research analyst at Horizon Asset Management, an independent portfolio manager and provider of proprietary research. Tina heads the finance committee of her own successful co-op and is an officer of her local neighborhood association's board. Thanks for joining us today, Tina, and let's get started.
Thank you, Maggie, and thank you, Savvy Ladies, for inviting me here today, and thank you all for listening in. So, I'm Tina Larsson. I am the co-founder of the Folsom Group. We are financial consultants to community associations. And today we're going to talk about what you need to know before buying into a community association, a co-op or a condo. So one of the factors that many homeowners don't think about is that for most of them, their primary residence is their single largest investment. They have other investments. We all have other investments, such as retirement accounts and personal investment accounts. Those are managed by carefully selected financial professionals, which is great. But when it comes to living in a community association, if you are not on your board, you basically write a blank check to those who are. And today we'll cover how community associations work and how you can take a more active role in your largest investment. And some of the takeaways will be what to consider before buying, and then once you own, how to take a more active role, and how to protect or even increase the value of your largest property, of your largest investment. Before I start, I just wanted to touch upon or share with you how we got started. So, as Maggie said, we all come from a Wall Street background. We all have combined 45 years combined experience as business analysts. I have been analyzing income statements and balance sheets for multi-billion-dollar companies for over 20 years for the purpose of finding undervalued investments for our clients. We got involved in residential real estate industry a little over 5 years ago. Just like any of the industries that we have been analyzing, this was just another industry to understand. We found out when analyzing the industry, found out that in New York, the fees are paid by the co-op and condo owners have been increasing by over 5% per year for the prior 10 years. Since associations operate on a nonprofit basis and they incur some common costs for repairs and maintenance for the common grounds and areas, the 5% seems very high in the current low inflation environment. The board is responsible for deciding on how much owners need to pay to cover those costs. The fee that each owner pays should therefore increase at the same rate as the common expenses. In theory, the rate of those expenses should be the same as the inflation, since by definition, inflation is the growth of all expenses. So in New York City, that hadn't been the case. In New York City, the average maintenance increase for co-ops, which account for approximately 80% of all associations, increased by above 5% per year. This didn't make sense to us. So we started investigating. We compiled a benchmark with hundreds of buildings and gained a deeper understanding of the industry. As financial analysts analyzing billion-dollar publicly traded companies, this was just another industry to learn the operations of. We found that most associations are run very inefficiently in comparison to for-profit businesses. We also found that there is no company that takes a holistic approach to help boards run a more efficient operation. So to summarize this, the board is responsible for setting the fee that owners pay to cover costs for operating the association. Those are the common grounds. Since the fees should be in line with inflation, they should be low right now in the low interest rate, inflation rate environment. Most volunteer-based associations, in our opinion, are inefficiently run and are in dire need of a consultant who can assist them operate more efficiently. So what is a community association? Well, we all got to live somewhere, right? There are two options. That's, of course, if you don't want to live on your parents' couch. You can rent or you can buy. You work with a good realtor and they will advise you on which one is better for you, rent or buy. But if you do decide to buy, you can either buy an independent home or a house, or you can buy a home in some form or structured community association. Over 65 million Americans, or 21% of the US population, own their home in an association. The most common associations are cooperative housing, known as co-ops, condominium, known as condos, or homeowners associations, and they're also referred to as HOAs. The form of association varies from state to state and city to city. With the exception of New York, where co-ops are most common, most apartments in metropolitan areas are condos. Whereas in suburban areas or rural areas, where there's a lot of gated communities, those can be either condos or HOAs. But it doesn't matter what form of association. I mean, there are variations to how they operate and tax-wise and stuff. But they're all quite complex organizations. They share some common space, perhaps a lobby or basement in a co-op or condo, whereas when it comes to an HOA, maybe they share some roads, pool, or even a tennis court. Because those are owned by the association's members or shareholders, they have governing documents which determine the law of the land. And they have a board which oversees that those documents are followed. The initial offering documents are filed with the State Attorney General's office. All buyers should review those as part of their due diligence. Those are the ones that determine what you can and cannot do to your unit with regards to renovation, decorations, renting out, barbecuing, and as of late, even if you're allowed to smoke in your own unit. Most buyers have leave the due diligence or understanding of the documents to the real estate attorney who specializes in understanding those types of documents. So it's very important to have a good real estate attorney when you're buying, especially in a community association. And so that you're not stuck with in this situation. Yes. Bottom line, associations are complex organizations with rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. They all have to be followed. It is extremely important for buyers to review their documents before buying so that they understand what they're allowed to and not allowed to. So who's the boss of the community association? Well, owners elect a board to oversee the association. Every year there's an annual meeting. I'm sure that you've all heard of friends who have gone to annual meetings, and it's a nightmare. Um, those annual meetings are for owners where they nominate and elect board members. The governing documents determine the board members' terms, which can be either 1 year at a time or multiple years. When multiple years, they can be staggered or some other variation. There can also be term limits, similar to political positions. There are pros and cons to every variation, depending on how good or bad the individual board members are. And as we know, that's really up to each individual and how well they work together. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of the community which it represents. It is not allowed to give favors to themselves. They're not allowed to have different rules for the board versus the rest of them. They have a fiduciary responsibility. And this includes overseeing the day-to-day operation of the community. Boards often hire a managing agent to run the administrative day-to-day operations. This includes making sure that the association is meeting all the compliance, all the building codes, water codes, fire codes, etc. They are responsible of taking resident issues, complaints, and they are also doing the bookkeeping. They're doing accounts receivable, accounts payable, etc. And some other stuff. Now, although the managing agent enforces the rules of the association, the board is the final and legal decision maker. And here's something interesting. Unless the association is very large with a large budget, each managing agent has more than one association. The managing agent reports to the managing agent firm first, since they are the ones who are paying their salary. And secondly, to the board of his or her community association. This can create a complicated structure and make the managing agent spread very thin. In the business world, how many people have you met who runs more than one company? So, owners elect their board, which then represent the interest of the owners. In our opinion, the best run associations have a board that is doing a great job at overseeing their managing agent and the staff of the association. So how are board members compensated? Well, board members are volunteers, and unlike corporate board members, they are not compensated for their time. However, in many startup corporate boards, members are compensated in stock instead of cash. And in a way, board members in an association can increase or decrease the value of their property ownership based on whether they do a great job or a poor job. Like all of us, board members are busy people. They have jobs, families, hobbies, commitments, golfing. They don't have a lot of time to spend on running the association. They often do not also have the knowledge of how the association operates. In the corporate world, there are enough qualified board members around for companies to be able to pick and choose who they want to be on their board. But in associations, board members often have to beg people to nominate themselves. Really, who has the time and energy to take another volunteer job in your own community, which seems to be so political, in most cases are very political, and might actually result in your neighbors unfriending you? To recap, Board members are unpaid, but they can in a way compensate themselves by getting involved to prevent increases in fees, which increases property values. Look after your investment. Getting involved in your association is the only way to have a say in the future of your investment. The board hires association advisors to the association, which for the most part, or traditionally, they include attorneys, CPAs, engineers, and managing agents. We are the self-proclaimed McKinsey of the residential real estate industry. Many major corporations like GE and IBM bring in a consultant every year to improve the efficiencies of their business operations. They pay large fees to run more efficiently. We provide that same holistic approach to the residential real estate industry, working directly with boards on improving their efficiencies. But unlike McKinsey, we do not charge an upfront fixed fee. Our fees are based on actual realized savings. If we don't find any savings, there's no cost to the association. So far, that's never been the case. We typically reduce costs by 5 to 10% of the annual operating budget. With our services entering the market, we feel that running for the board suddenly got much easier. So, are you ready to get involved in your association, your co-op or condo? Contact me today and mention Savvy Ladies for a free consultation. And now we open up for Q&A.
Thanks, Tina. Just a reminder that if you have a question, you can use the chat box or email info@savvyladies.org. And a question we have here is, what type of fees are associated with co-ops and condos?
What type of fees? So the fees are basically covering the costs to run the organization. So in whether it's a co-op or condo, so for a co-op, their real estate taxes are including in your maintenance. So in a co-op, it's called a maintenance fee. So you buy into a co-op, you pay maintenance every single month. That includes the mortgage payments, which is tax deductible. Of the co-op, there's an underlying mortgage. It also includes taxes, real estate taxes, and then it is the operation of running the building. So it's to have a super and maybe a doorman, a handyman, etc. So it's all the staff, and then it's to keep the building in compliance. It's also to replace the roofs when they need to be done, etc., etc. A condo does not have an underlying mortgage and does not have real estate taxes. But in a condo, you pay something called like common charges. It's also supposed to cover the cost of running the entire building, but then you pay separately your own real estate tax because you own that unit, so that the city actually taxes you individually as opposed to in a co-op where they tax the entire organization.
Okay, thank you. And the next question we have is, my board just sent a memo indicating that they are raising our fees by 7%, which is more than inflation. Do I, as an owner, have any recourse?
Get on the board. I mean, the board, you vote as an owner, you vote for the board. Then it's just like voting for the government. You vote for the government, and whatever the government does, they do. You have no recourse. So the same way in an association, you vote for the board, and then the board, they determine that they're going to increase the fee by 7%, and that's usually what we see. And the only way to stop that is to get on the board and fight it. Yeah. Get on the board, try to run it, hire us, or do what you need to do, and then try to lower the total cost to run the building. And we worked with a building that didn't increase maintenance for 6 years or more. Yeah.
Okay. And the next question is, am I allowed to sit in on a board meeting or see notes from a past board meeting before buying a condo?
You, whether you're allowed to sit in a board meeting, that's really up to the board. So the, some boards they allow it and some don't. They are required by law to have one annual meeting where you are invited, but and that's the one where you normally vote for the board members. But the regular meetings, we see different things. So we work with some buildings where they have maybe a half an hour session before the actual board meeting, where they invite a few people to come in. We work with other buildings where once per quarter they allow non-board members to attend the meeting. So it really depends, and it's except for the annual meeting where they're required to hold an annual meeting open to owners, there's no requirements. And what was the other question, Maggie? I'm sorry. It was kind of a two-part question.
If you're allowed to sit in on the meeting or if you can see notes from past meetings.
Yes. Seeing notes from past meetings, absolutely. And that is one of the things that your real estate attorney helps you. They actually work with the managing agent on getting the minutes from the meetings so that they will be able to review them before you buy into the building. Now, one of the things when it comes to minutes is that there are some boards that have that don't want to be very transparent, and there are other ones that are very transparent. So there's some boards we've actually seen notes where it says this is the date meeting was held. That's their entire minutes. So they're in a way following rules, and they're providing the minutes to buyers, and so they're not really doing anything that's, I don't think that it's illegal, but it doesn't tell anybody anything. Whereas in other buildings or in other organizations, they have very good meeting minutes, and you can really read the minutes and figure out, okay, so are they doing a good job or are they doing a bad job? In our opinion, if they have better notes, that indicates that it's a more transparent board, and there's nothing shady going on. If they say very little, it's not so transparent.
Okay. All right. And the next question for you is, did you determine the reason maintenance costs went up at 5% per year in Manhattan when these costs did not rise in other areas? Manhattan boards don't have a monopoly on poor judgment.
That's true. No, what we did was that we only analyzed Manhattan area. So we didn't analyze anywhere else in the country. We just analyzed New York, and when we saw that it was increasing at the rate that it was increasing, we said, listen, this is just poor management. Initially, we thought that it was something else because we couldn't figure it out. But then when we looked into it deeper, we're like, this is just poor management. This is just not well run. There's just a lot of waste. And I would expect that it's exactly the same in the rest of the country. It's just that we just analyzed it more.
Okay. And another question we have for you is, do managing agents perceive companies like the Folsom Group as stepping on their toes, or are they open to your recommendations?
So it's a little It's a little there. It can be both ways. So we are generally, you're right. It can be perceived that we're stepping on their toes, but in reality, we're not, because managing agents spend most of their time, and I don't know what the percentage, let's say 90% of their time, on running the day-to-day operation of the building. There's a lot of laws that they have to follow. There's a lot of complaints from owners. There's a lot of sudden there's a gas leak here and there's bed bugs there. There's so many different issues that always happen, and they're always or very often emergencies. And then there's annual meeting season, and then it's window guard season, and then it's lead paint season. So there are a lot of things going on that they have to take care of. And then whatever leftover time that they have for them to try to do what we do, which we do 100% of our time. 100% of our resources are used to cut buildings costs. That's what we do. We do not manage buildings. We do not try to stay in compliance. I mean, of course, we don't try to not be, but I mean, we have nothing to do with that. We don't have accounts receivable or accounts payable. We renegotiate contracts and fees. That's what we do 100% of our time. Now, so we're not trying to step on managing agents' toes, and but sometimes we see the managing agents have not yet been recommending us. Once we get into a building, we normally work with boards, and once we're in a building, we have not had any problems with working with the managing agents once we're in the building. But we're hired by a board, and then they basically tell, I mean, if they hire a lawyer, they could ask their managing agent to help them hire a lawyer. But they could also just say, you know what, we've made up a decision, we're going to change our lawyers. And the managing agent might not have anything to do with that. In the same way, they hire us, and once we're there, we're there. We're just another um, vendor or for for the board. Yeah. And oh, and when yeah, I think that covers it.
Okay. Another question we have is, I've been told by friends that I should ask what percentage of units are owner occupied versus renter occupied. But why does this matter?
That's a good question. And that's really a question for a realtor. And so when it comes to a co-op, some banks do not want to lend in buildings that have too high renter occupied. But there are other issues too. It might impact insurance. It might impact the cost of running the building. Very often, renters don't care as much about um, the common areas, etc., or their apartment, or the rules of the building, the policies and procedures, where you're allowed to throw out your garbage, etc. It's normally the way it works is that if you're an owner, then you just bought your $500,000 apartment, then you're very proud and you want to take care of it and you might want to upgrade it and you want to follow all the rules. If you're a renter, you're going to be there for a year. Yeah, maybe not so. Um, Maybe you're not such a good tenant. Could still be, but not as much. It won't take care of the build or the of all the yeah policies and upgrades, etc. Um, as you would if you own the apartment.
All right. Well, those are the questions we have for now, Tina, but your contact information is here, which we'll be sharing with everyone. So I want to thank you for a really great presentation today, and thanks to everyone who joined us and asked questions. We hope you'll be joining us again. And thanks so much, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.